Hey everyone. So I wanted to feature another gem of wisdom courtesy of Ram Dass once again. Here at the end of a lengthy Q&A session, he answers a question someone had about how to explain the death of a child. How do we make sense of something like that? Of someone we love leaving us prematurely or under tragic circumstances? How do we reconcile such horrific events with a supposedly all-loving, all-powerful God? And is there any purpose or understanding to be found in such suffering? These are the sorts of questions that tend to crop up in these situations. But enough preamble. Let's play the clip and listen to his answer.
This is a letter I got from a man whose 23-year-old son went surfing and drowned. And he wrote me, and he felt that there was no spiritual possibility there could be any explanation for this. Problem is, I'm not sure I have the letter. Yeah, I do. It's not nice. I have in hand the extraordinary letter which you wrote to me April 7th. I want to apologize for the delay in my response, etc. I feel such pain for the loss that you and your wife have suffered. The grief that parents experience at the loss of a child is perhaps the deepest grief of all, because it seems to upset the natural order of things, and because you say in your remarkable letter, Keith was your future. What I can share with you from a spiritual vantage point cannot really allay your grief as a parent. Perhaps, however, it may allow you and Keith to know each other in another way, and that other way of knowing may give balance to the grief. With this balance, you may then be a little more able to bear the unbearable. He described Keith to me. Keith had a strong and attractive and coordinated 23-year-old body. He also had a warm and vibrant personality. These were the obvious ways that you could know Keith through your own senses and thinking mind. But there is another way in which we can know one another, through our intuitive hearts. This way of knowing one another is subtle, and so it is often hidden behind the more obvious ways of knowing through senses and thought. But if we know what to look for and cultivate that intuitive way of knowing, we find out for ourselves that we are each indeed more than just body and personality. While no name is entirely satisfactory for this other dimension of ourselves, for the purpose of our discussion, the word soul will do. What is this soul? It's a unique entity which, when the time is right, clothes itself in a personality and body to take birth on the physical human plane. This personality and body are much like spacesuits for dwelling on Earth. Inevitably, in all but the rarest cases, within a few years, the infant becomes so strongly identified with its spacesuit that it loses its memory of its initial identity as a soul. Then we live out life engaged in our human vocations until our death, when we leave behind the spacesuit and once again remember our true selves as souls. I can sense from your description of Keith and from the pictures that he sent me the purity of his heart and the beauty of his soul. And I suspect that though you consider his work on earth just at the beginning, for his soul the work was completed. Even the manner of his leaving was part of his work. Now, I realize that for you it is inconceivable that a son who could call when he was going to be late in the evening could possibly leave you in such a fashion by choice. But you see, it was not his personality's choice, but his soul's choice. His personality would, in fact, never be able to leave you because of the power of the bonds of human attached love that existed between you and your wife and your son. But the soul is not limited by human attached love, because it knows that it is joined to others by what is sometimes called the love that surpasseth understanding. It is conscious or spiritual love. It is the love that Christ shares with his Father. It is the same love that binds you and Keith together, far more deeply than even the human love of father and son. Now, when your grief is at its strongest, it is hard to tune in to this deeper love, especially since it makes no rational sense. I cannot negate the pain, but it will balance that loss with a new opportunity. For now that his captivating form is no longer present, you are more free to make contact with his soul, especially if you are able to acknowledge your own. The question of whether your life has been destroyed by this event is another point that is touched by our discussion. For your personality, the pain is shattering and seemingly unbearable. I have no doubt that you awaken crying and find life now meaningless. Such suffering is what the personality would avoid at all costs if it were possible. For your soul, however, it is an entirely different matter. For your soul, suffering is that which forces you to grow spiritually and brings you closer to awakening to whom you in truth are.
What an incredibly articulate explanation. I really was in awe listening to this lecture and thought it was the perfect note to end it on, because it doesn't get much better than that. The key here, I think, is drawing a distinction between the soul and the personality. Understanding that our soul, or higher self if you will, is operating on a different level, one which we typically aren't even aware of. You could call this fate, you could call it divine providence, or God's plan, or any number of terms. It doesn't really matter. But the takeaway, I guess you could say, is that it isn't ego-based. That's for sure. It isn't even human, technically. It's beyond that as well. It is spiritual. It goes back to the very essence of who we are. As he says, it is not the personality's choice of when to leave this plane, but the soul's. And that date is perhaps already more or less predetermined before you were even born. I also love the point he made about how suffering is that which forces you to grow spiritually. What a beautiful sentiment. This seems to be one of the hallmarks of the spiritual path. To find the hidden lessons in suffering, to transcend the victim mentality of why me and wallowing in feelings of self-pity or anger, and instead begin to ask, what can I learn from this experience? What is the universe trying to teach me? And how can I grow from this? For make no mistake, there is always a deeper underlying reason for our suffering. We just need to be in the right state of mind to see it.